Hey everybody, welcome to the Author Show Board Game Review video review channel over here on YouTube. And what you're watching right now is my list of top 51 board games of all time. And we've made it. We're now at numbers 10 to number 1, the end of the list. Well, maybe not quite the end of the list, because after I'm done here, I'm going to do a little bit of a retrospective in a separate video and also cover both of my son's top 10 board games of all time for them also, because they want to throw in their opinions, and it's kind of cool to watch the parallels between their list and my list also. But don't want to go too much on the wah stuff here. But it was really interesting to put this list together. And it was also interesting to see how all the way up to almost the last minute, matter of fact, right before I finished filming numbers 20 through 11, I was still juggling my top 10 games of all time. See, this list was really, really difficult for me. This was the hardest part. My top 10 games was extremely brutal for me. Well, my 41 to 51 is also a little bit tough for me, but the games in the middle had a pretty decent way of they all kind of fell into place pretty well. But the top 10 games was a constant battle. Some of these games I had a heck of a time trying to make a decision which would be number 7, which would be number 8, because the games were so close together. But I finally had to decide just what kind of criteria I was looking for and decide which game was better than the other. And it's really interesting because all the way down to the end of the finish line, number 1 and number 2 flip-flopped many, many times. But that's enough of that wah stuff. Let's go ahead and start the list with number 10. Number 10 on the list is Seven Wonders, a card drafting game for up to 7 players. And this is a civilization themed, not a civilization building, but a civilization themed game. In this game, every single player has a hand of cards. No, your hand's not this big, but I'm just trying to show you. But every single player has a hand of cards. During the game, every single player looks at their hand of cards, picks one of the cards and places it down in front of them. And everybody passes their cards either to the left, depending on the age, or to the right, again, depending on the age. Then everybody reveals their cards and they put their card in play, and by adding it onto their civilization, some of the various aspects. Now, some of these cards are going to give you victory points, they're going to give you technologies, they're going to give you resources, and give you various different ways to start advancing your civilization. Of course, the eventual goal at the end of the game is to have the most victory points, but this game was very, very interesting for many, many reasons. First of all, it plays up to 7 players, and it plays very, very well. Of course, it does play down to 2 players, in which way it doesn't play well at all, which is why they came out with Seven Wonders Duel, which made the game into a 2-player game. But that's not on this list, and that's a different topic at this time. But this game allowed you to play up to 7 players in a civilization game, but it wasn't a 7-player civilization game that took you 7 hours. It didn't matter how many players you added to the game, it did not add a lot to the gameplay time. This was a game that you can play 3 players all the way up to 7 players and still get the game played in about an hour and 15 minutes or less, sometimes even quicker if you're playing with players who are very astute and very well versed in the game itself. Now, the game has lots of variety built into it because the way the cards are going to come out, there's war strategies you can go for where you can start getting different engines. You can start going for the sciences for different amount of victory points. You can start going for the different buildings you can get, the bathhouses, and all these different things that give you victory points. Or you can try to trade with the other players, force them to buy all the resources from you, because money can also be victory points. And of course, there are other expansions that came out for the game, such as the Leaders expansion, the Cities expansion, the Babel expansion, but all these different expansions added a lot to the game. Now, I will firstly say, do not play this game with all the expansions thrown in there. It's probably going to be an exercise in misery. It's just going to make what is so brilliant about the game, the quicker play time, basically fall by the wayside, and at that point you might as well play a real civilization game. But this is a game that's fantastic if you piecemeal and pick one of the expansions, throw it in with the basic game, and have a heck of a lot of fun. The game does a great job of making you feel like you're playing a civilization game. You have a very good card drafting game here, very well designed, fantastic mechanics, some very, very entertaining expansions. Matter of fact, I always teach the game with the Leaders expansion every time I play the game. I always at least have the Leaders, and sometimes I throw in the Babel expansion. But it's a game I greatly enjoy, and it's number 10 on my list, Seven Wonders. Number 9 on the list is Robinson Crusoe Adventures on a Cursed Island. It's a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players where the players are trying to survive on various scenarios, and all these scenarios play very differently. Now, you may notice on my list that there's not a lot of cooperative games. And the main reason why is because when you have a game that is this awesome, it kind of makes a lot of the other cooperative games pale by comparison, and that is definitely why this game deserves to be so high on my list. See, in Robinson Crusoe, like I said, it's a scenario-based game. Start of the game, the player is going to pick one of the 8 scenarios. And now you can have a scenario such as Castaways, where the players have 1 year to build up enough stockpile wood to create a bonfire to survive the winter, signal a ship, and escape. Otherwise, the player is going to lose. Because lose is something that's going to happen to you when you're playing this game quite a bit, because this game is extremely challenging. See, in the game Robinson Crusoe, every single player picks a character, whether it happens to be an explorer, a soldier, a cook, or you happen to be a carpenter. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that they did a nice touch by making a male and a female side of all the cards, so you have both these sides. They play exactly the same, but it's just a nice little touch to make the game feel a lot more like it's open to everybody. It's a nice little touch. More games should definitely do that. But in the game, the players have to survive as a group, because if at least one player loses their last hit point, all of our survivors have lost. And we're trying to complete various scenarios. Again, whether it's trying to signal a ship before we freeze to death during the wintertime, or if we happen to have a scenario where we're just trying to rescue somebody, survive on a volcanic island, avoid cannibals, or any one of these scenarios, including the classic Swiss Family Robinson. The brilliance of the game is how the game plays out. See, in this game, you're going to take a certain amount of these cards, and it's a very small amount of these cards, ensuring there's tons and tons of replay to this game. And you're going to have this deck of cards. You're going to start with usually about 12, 15 of these cards. Again, depends how many rounds there are. And at the start of every round, you're going to flip one of these cards over. Then the players must go out there and try to get resources. They must explore the island. They have to gather food. They have to hunt. But before they can do any of this stuff, they need to get things such as build spears, build knives, build traps, build snares, build maps, do various different things, because you need to have food, you need to have hides. Why do you need to have hides? Because you don't have shelter. So you need to build a shelter. So you're trying to do all these things just so you can survive, but the game is doing everything it can to make your life more difficult. Because as you're going out there doing these things, such as exploring the island and unlocking different sections of the island and finding more resources, you're also potentially adding more of these cards into your deck of 15 cards. And every single round, you're going to shuffle these cards up. And occasionally, these cards that you use for exploration are going to come back and bite you. Whether you may go out there and explore and may say something like, hey, you found a patch of mushrooms. Do you want to bring it back? It could be food. You can feed the rest of your survivors. And then you look over your supply of food and go, guys, we don't have any food. Should I bring back these mushrooms? If I don't bring them back, you're going to take damage and we're all going to suffer and die because we don't have enough food to feed us anyways. So I guess we kind of have to take this food. So you're going to take that food card, shuffle it into the deck of cards, and that card may come back, it may not. But when it comes back, you're going to have to suffer the penalties of that food that you so desperately needed at that time. And that's one of the interesting mechanics of this game, because you're going to start slowly shuffling these cards in from the exploration deck, from the cooking deck, and also from the building deck. You may have mishaps such as, hey, you found some extra wood. Do you want to use it to build your shelter? That card comes back up and you find out that wood was rotted and half of your shelter just collapsed and all of your hard work just went to waste. And you may say, well, why would you take that? Well, you take that because you need that shelter because it was wintertime and the weather dice was coming to make your life difficult. And if you didn't have the ability to survive the weather dice, you were going to take more damage. And again, like I said earlier, if one person takes enough damage, all of our adventurers have lost. Robinson Crusoe is an absolutely fantastic game. It is my absolute, hands down, favorite cooperative playing game out of any co-op game I've ever owned or ever played. It's brilliantly designed. I love the challenge level. I love the variety. And I'm extremely happy that I was able to track down the upgrade kit for the game. I bought the original first edition of the game. And you can actually check out my tutorial video I did for the game a while ago. But they actually managed to come out with a second edition of the game that actually put stickers on all these pieces, which was a very nice touch. It gave you shaped pieces for all the components, so you can tell the food that lasts a while versus the food that you have to get every single day, versus your hide, versus your wood and everything like that. And it also came with an extra King Kong scenario. So that nice upgrade kit added a lot to a game to bring a fantastic game and make it even better. That's Robinson Crusoe, number 9 of my top 51 board games of all time. Number 8 on my list is Space Empires 4X, a game that puts the 4X in 4X, quite literally. See, this is a space empire building game, a 4X of explore, exploit, expand, and exterminate, and also proves that you don't need a lot of bling to make an absolutely fantastic game. In Space Empires 4X, every single player controls a space-faring empire, and this isn't a point race or anything like that. This is a game of absolute war, because your objective is to blow the other players completely out of outer space, send them all the way back to the dinosaur age, and destroy every shred of civilization they ever had, because this is a game of all-out war. This game has a very well-designed game where every single player starts in their little sector of the galaxy, and you're going to expand. You're going to build up your empire through tech trees, allow you to expand how your empire is growing, how it's changing, different ways you're going to advance your civilization, and then you're going to go out there and explore, because every one of these hexes out here has one of these squares on it, placed face down. So as you're exploring, you're going to enter these hexes, and you have no idea what is there. It could be minerals, it could be lost in space, could be dangers, or could be lots of different things. It could even be nebulas and all these different things, because you're going to precede this board before you even start playing the game. And there are more tokens than you will ever use in the game, because every single one of these starting civilizations starts with cubes that's going to start in their area, making sure that your system is going to evolve at a more natural rate, so you don't have anybody who gets hosed over too early by getting a whole bunch of dangers, because you have this preset amount of markers. But once you get into black outer reaches of space, it's pretty much no man's land there, and anything can happen to your civilization. See, this is an absolutely enjoyable game. I have so much fun with this game. There's so many different ways to play this game. There's different tech trees. There's different ways to advance your civilization. Now, this is a longer playing game, and like I said, this isn't a point race where you're like, okay, well, if I take my little spaceship here, I'm going to get 2 victory points, and I'll go right here, and we'll slap each other around. Oh, I got 5 more victory points going to come over here. No, this is a game of war. You are out there to slap your opponent down and take over victory. That's Space Empires 4X. Number 7 on the list is Lords of Zidit, a program movement game for up to 5 players, and this is the only program movement game on my entire list. I know we can't call it spoilers anymore because there's only 6 more to go. You pretty much can guarantee there's no other program movement games on the list. None at all. In Lords of Zidit, every single one of the players controls one of the sorcerers, and you may recognize them because this is the World of Seasons, which is another game that happened on my list. A little bit higher up, but it was definitely on my list. And this is a program movement game. And the idea of the game is at the start of every single round, every single one of the players is going to program their movements by placing their selections on this wheel. Once all the players have programmed in their movement, we're all going to reveal at the same time. And then we're going to carry out our actions by everybody playing in round order. Everybody carries out the 1 action, then everybody carries out their 2 action in play order, the 3 action play order, etc., all the way to number 6. Here's the trick of the game. It's program movement where we're trying to get resources. Our resources here are these farmers, these archers, these priests, these wizards, and these warriors that we are going to hire to take out these giant titans, these wizards, these bad creatures who are rampaging across the land. And we're going to take these out so we can have towers built in our honor, so we can have bards sing our praises, and of course so we get the money, because that's how we win the game. And that is probably one of the second reasons why I think this game is absolutely fantastic. Because to win this game, you don't have the most of all those resources. You just got to make sure that you do not have the least of any of those resources every time you set up the game. Because every time you set up the game, you're going to randomize how this works. There's 3 different scoring conditions. Wizard towers, which is represented by the castle. Singing of the bards, singing your praises, which is represented by the harp. And then finally, having money, which is represented by the treasure chest. And at the start of the game, you're going to lay these out like this, and you pick a random order. It doesn't really matter at the start, but it lets the players know what they're doing. At the end of the game, to win the game, if this was our example, you just need to make sure that you do not have the least amount of towers built, because whoever has the least amount of towers built is removed from the game. It doesn't matter if they have the most treasure. They didn't have enough towers, so they're removed from the game. So it's a balance you must maintain at all times. Then we're going to see who has the least amount of the bards singing the praises. Again, even if you had the most treasures, you're still going to be knocked out of the game. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to find out who has the most treasure, and they're going to win the game. So it's a very interesting game, because on top of all that, all the players have a shield where they secretly keep all their resources, such as their workers, their resources such as how much money they've managed to gain, and not only that, the amount of praises the bards have been singing in their honor, is going to be slightly hidden in a center tower where the players can gain victory points. Of course, in the outlying outskirts, well, we can all see how much the praises of the bards are being sung for us. But when we get to the center lands where the most it matters, we don't know how much the bards are singing our praises. So there's hidden scoring. And again, like I said earlier, it's not a game of having the most. It's just guaranteeing you don't have the least. Built in with a very, very entertaining program movement game where you have a bit of a mind game going on where you look at another player, black and yellow may look at each other, and black may go, I need a priest. But if I go there first, I have to pick up the warrior. So does yellow need a warrior, or does he need a priest? Or is yellow going to go the other way and go defeat that creature over there? Or are they going to ignore it because they need to go over here and get resources? Or do they want to have the bard sing the praises over here? Or are they thinking that I'm thinking that they're thinking that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Okay, I just need to program my movement, hope I get it right, and then watch as their decision is totally wrong, and they move over, and they have to follow the program movement. They go, oh my gosh, that's not what I wanted to do. It's a brilliant game. It's absolutely fun. And one of my best memories of this game was playing at a library, a 5-player game where we got the 5-player game down in 45 minutes. It was absolutely awesome between 5 players who knew the mechanics, knew how to play the game, and the final game was won by 1 piece of gold. 1 piece of gold. Never going to forget that, guys. 1 piece of gold. I almost won the game. You beat me by... Okay, I'm a little bit bitter. Not really. I had a heck of a lot of fun because that's Lords of Zidit, number 7 on my list. Number 6 on my list is Race for the Galaxy. Not Roll for the Galaxy, Race for the Galaxy. It's a card game for 2 to 4 players, or 1 to 5 players with this expansion, or all the way up to 6 players if you get this expansion. And yes, this one does allow you to make it a solo game, which is a phenomenal way to learn the game. It's a very well-designed AI that uses a little bit of a dice, but still creates a very challenging game that I still can actually play nowadays, unless I have a PC or my smartphone, because this game is now available as an app for the smartphone. It's a really well done app. If you like Race for the Galaxy, just go out there and buy the app. It is so darn well done. But anyways, what is Race for the Galaxy? Race for the Galaxy is a card game where the players have 2 sets of cards. They have their 1 set of card, which is allowing them to pick which action that they are going to perform this round. So you have this hand of cards, and you're not going to show this hand of cards to other players. Well, you're not going to show your other hand to the players either, but let me not jump ahead of myself here. But you have this hand of cards, which is the amount of actions you're going to take. So every player looks at their available actions, picks one, and places it face down. All the other players are going to do the same thing. Then everybody reveals what action they are going to perform. The trick here is that I'm not the only one who gets to do action 5. Everybody gets to do action 5 because I picked that as an action. The trick is that since I actually played the action 5 card, I get a little bit of a bonus. And anybody else who played the action 5 card also does it. Well, let's say the green player played the number 2 action. So again, everybody's going to do action number 2, but the green player gets the extra bonus for playing the card. And what is this going to allow you to do? It's going to allow you to build your space empire because you have all these cards. These cards will allow you to do things such as add extra technologies to your empire, add worlds to your empire, build up your military by getting military worlds, conquering all these military worlds, conquering rebel colonies, getting these rebel bases, and creating this empire where your eventual objective is to have the most victory points at the end of the game. Now, the fantastic thing about Race for the Galaxy is between players who are versed very well in the game, even if you play this game with up to 5, 6 players, it can still be played in less than half an hour. Even a 6-player game can be played in less than a half hour. And it is a very well-designed game. And it's also very interesting because you see people who are new to the game who claim that this game is random and there's no skill to it. And then you have a player who's very well-versed in the game, such as myself, who will trounce them every single time. Because there is so much skill to this game. This is a very, very skill-based game. By knowing the cards, knowing the way you build your empire, knowing how to get your engine going, and knowing that this is a game that wraps up very, very quickly. Because the card is going to wrap out, or the game is going to wrap up as soon as one player adds a certain amount of cards to their tableau, or as soon as all the victory points out of the center pile are removed for the game. So it's a game of you trying to build your engine efficiently, but knowing when to kick your engine into high gear to pull ahead in the points and win the game. It's a very fantastic game. I enjoy it very, very much. It's actually played in a couple different arcs. You have the first arc, which has up to 3 expansions to it. You have a second arc, which you can pretend doesn't exist. And then there's a third arc that's out that's actually pretty good, but I don't actually own it because I am very happy with the base set of Race for the Galaxy, number 6 on my list of top 51 board games or card games of all time. Number 5 on the list is Through the Ages. Now, in this case, a new story of civilization, but the old game, the first edition, is still just as fantastic. In Through the Ages, this is an empire building game where the players are going to play through 4 ages. They go through the Age of Antiquity, all the way up to the 3rd age, and through the 4th age, but let's not nitpick on the rules here at all. Basically, the way this game is going to work is players are going to have cards coming out on this track that gives them things such as wonders they can build to add to their civilization. They're going to gain the ability to add extra resources to their civilization. They're going to gain leaders. All these leaders help them improve their civilization. They're going to have access to all these cards, and they're going to move through various ages trying to build up their empire, gaining extra governments, gaining extra ways to advance their civilization with resources, gaining extra ways to advance their civilization by theater, learning different ways to advance your civilization through the sciences, because the eventual goal of this game is to become the most enlightened civilization. And you do this by increasing the way your civilization works. But this is a game that is all about efficiency and managing your empire, because you cannot grow your empire too fast because your empire has needs. Your empire needs to eat. If you bring out your civilization too fast and you run out of food, or you don't have enough food in your stockpile, you're going to start suffering corruption. And that corruption is going to take away your resources and damaging how your empire goes. You also need to bring out more people to send them out there to work on your farms, to bring in food, to go out there and work in your mines, to bring out extra resources. Maybe go out there for warfare so you can fight battles, because you're going to have all these gray cards, which allow you to do things such as have extra territories to conquer. You're going to have to experience things such as wars, learn extra technologies, learn extra tactics, have aggressions with other players, and you're going to have this very interesting game that has taken the classic PC game from Sid Meier's, the Civilization game, and turned it into a board game. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this is a very long game, even with players who know the game very well. If you play this game, and it does play up to 4 players, but even with very experienced gamers, a 4-player game can still run up to about 3 hours. And it is, at its heart, it's a card game, because you just have these cards coming across a row. There's no dudes on a map or anything like that, but you are still having a grand experience and a grand feel of a civilization building game. I enjoy this game very much. Even the new edition made some improvements that I really, really like. I think it improved on the original game to the point that it actually made me go out there and buy the 2nd edition. I was one of those stalwart holdouts for the longest time, saying, nope, I refuse to buy the same game all over again. Well, I did anyways, because they made improvements on the game that made it worth it. I enjoy this game so much. Again, I grew up playing Civilization games on the PC, and this game gives me the feeling of a Civilization game, the PC game, in a card and board game. It is very enjoyable, fantastic, plays all the way up to 4 players. Again, it's going to play longer, but it gives you the feeling of building up a civilization through the ages. Number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list is Dominant Species, and this game is dominating my mind because right now I want to play this game. This is a game I enjoy so immensely because it's an area control game. It's a war game, don't believe anybody else. It's also a game where you can place your workers out to go ahead and take various selections because it's a worker placement game. It's a war game, don't believe what anybody tells you. In Dominant Species, every single player represents a species on the planet Earth. You have the jerky jerk faces, or as we kind of should call them, the spiders. They're jerks. They eat everybody. They're jerks. You also have things such as amphibians, you have birds, you have mammals, you have reptiles, you have insects, and you're basically trying to survive before the Earth is covered with tundra because the ice age is coming. And the only way you can do that is by adapting your species, becoming the most adaptable to the changing environment, scoring enough victory points, and winning the game. See, in Dominant Species, it's a war game. Don't let anybody tell you anything else. This is die-hard war game. It's brutal. It's cutthroat, and it is very, very mean. And it's not just because it has the jerky jerk face spiders in the game who like to eat all the other players. In this game, the players, like I said, are trying to evolve their species. Because at the start of your game, every single species is able to survive on certain kind of things, elements on the planet. For example, the beginning spiders like to survive off of larvae and other insects, but they can evolve to the point where they can start surviving off things such as eating meat, or maybe they'll learn to survive off things in the water, or, they're jerky jerk faces, they'll survive off of meat. But anyways, you're going to evolve your species, because you have to evolve your species, because the only way to proliferate across the planet, because the planet is going to continue to grow, because this is how players are going to score victory points, and they must match whatever that certain section of the world happens to be. Because if you cannot survive on that section of the world, you will go extinct on that section of the world. And here's the most important thing to understand about dominant species. Each one of your cubes here represents one of your species. If one of your species dies to anything in the game except glaciation, and I mean anything besides glaciation, you don't put them back in your supply. They're destroyed. They are removed from the game. And that makes this game so brutal, so cutthroat, and so darn fun. Because your resources aren't something like, oh yeah, I can afford to lose these kind of resources over. No, you can't afford to lose anything in this game. In a 6-player game, you start with 35 species, and one of them is one to track your victory points. You're almost like, I want that one. Because you can go to the end of the game and look and say, wow, I have one species left in my pile. That's all I got. But you're still possibly going to win the game. But this is a game that is absolutely brutal in how it plays, because the players are being aggressive. This is not a game of friendliness. This is a game of adaptation and survival of the fittest, whether that fittest thing happens to be the jerky jerk faces or the mammals, which is what really happened in the real world. And the way the game works is also, yeah, it does have a little bit of a worker placement mechanic, because the players are going to have action selection, and it's first come, first serve on all these locations. All these locations do various things, such as attacking other players. Remember, if you die, it's permanent. Bringing on the Ice Age and adding on to the Ice Age, bring on the glaciation of the planet, hoping you can evolve, because as the Ice Age comes, resources have become more and more thinner. And again, your objective is to survive and adapt in dominant species. Number 4 on my list of top 51 board games of all time. Number 3 on my list is Kemet, and Kemet is a game that has hooks in me from the very first time I played it. Now, Kemet is a game from Madigo, and it's kind of in the series of games that they have. You have Inish, which is kind of a dudes on the map game for lower player counts. You have Kyclades or Cyclades, however you want to pronounce it, which is a game, kind of an area control, dudes on the map style game with an auction mechanic. And then you have Kemet, which in my opinion is the best of the three. And of course I say that because it fits my player group well. I have a larger player group size, so while those other games are good, this one just fits my player group perfectly, and it's a game I enjoy immensely. See, in the game of Kemet, every single player represents one of these civilizations that is trying to gain dominance. But the way you gain dominance in this game is by smashing the other players, because this is unapologetically an aggressive game of all about attacking. Matter of fact, you cannot win the game without attacking other players. You can look over here. How do you gain victory points? Well, it says right here, by attacking and winning battles, you gain victory points. It's one of the main ways you gain victory points in the game. It's an aggressive game about all-out war. In this game, every single player has a certain amount of units that they're going to send out to go out there and capture various different locations. They're going to capture these locations, they're going to give them power that allows them to do things, and then use this power to do things such as move their units, build up the levels of their pyramids, and I'll show you why that's so cool in just a second. Or they can use that to go ahead and learn extra technologies, such as blue technologies. They can learn red technologies, white technologies, or if you get the expansion, they can learn these black technologies. And all these different technologies allow them to do things like gain special kind of units with special powers, gain special abilities, different ways to advance their civilization, and all these cool things that go in to make this very interesting game. Now, the interesting thing about this game is every single player starts with 3 pyramids in the basic game, not talking about the expansion. And usually you're going to start with 3 pyramids at level 1, or you can start with 1 at level 2, another one at level 1, and another one at 0. You're basically going to start with 3 levels of pyramid power. And you're going to evolve your pyramids, because the more powerful your pyramids become, the more powerful these special abilities you can get to add your empire and make your empire more powerful. And again, this is a game all about aggression, because you get victory points by attacking other players. And that is the secondary cool thing about the game. This is not Risk. There are no dice involved in this game when you get aggressive. It's all about intelligent, smart card play, because when you get in battles with other players, you're going to play cards from a very limited hand of cards, and you have to play all your cards. You can't get your cards back in your hand until you've gone through an entire card stack. So you must judge when to use your powerful cards, when to use your defensive cards, when do you play your offensive cards, when do you just throw all caution to the wind, do your most damaging card, because there's also special cards, special abilities, and everything that go into this game. This is a game that is so well done. This game I enjoy so much. This comes with a double-sided board, which guarantees that as a war game, it keeps a tight game because you can play with the 5-player side, or you can flip it over for the 2 and 4-player side, which shrinks down the board, guaranteeing that this game has tons of conflict, tons of interaction, and so much replay. Just the way these tiles come out, the way you buy your upgrades to your civilization, and I haven't even talked about the expansion, which adds so much variety, extra gameplay, and also brings out the extra pyramids, the black pyramids, which brings out another tech tree for all of our races here. That's Kemet the Game, a wonderful game for 2 to 5 players that I enjoy very, very much as number 3 on my top 51 board games of all time. Number 2 on my list is Clash of Cultures, especially when you throw in the expansion that adds in civilizations, because it takes a great game and makes it even better because it allows you to play civilizations throughout the ages. And that's probably why I enjoy this game so much, because it gives me the feeling of a civilization game while still having units on a map that I'm exploring that has a fog of war where I'm looking for resources while I'm trying to avoid hordes of barbarians from attacking and knocking down my doors. And I have a tech tree that allows me to build up my civilization, and this game lets me play multiple different ways. See, in Clash of Cultures, you are trying to become the most dominant culture on the planet as the planet is slowly evolving. Now, this isn't a typical civilization game where you're playing all the way from 4000 BC to the future where we're going to get fighter jets. It's a smaller period of time, but the small period of time that's represented is represented so very well in this game. Because, like I said, you do have a tech tree that's going to allow you to build up your civilization and modify them, giving the fact that you can get steel weapons to start becoming more aggressive, add aqueducts, add a lot of things that allow you to survive random events that can come out. Because this game has done an absolutely fantastic job, much like Through the Ages, of bringing the feeling of the Civilization PC games into a board game. Of course, unlike the Civilization Through the Ages, unfortunately we're not fighting through 6,000 years of Earth's history. We're fighting through a very specific time, but this specific time is done extremely well. I enjoy this game so much. I think it's done so well, especially once you get the Civilizations expansion. And I feel so sorry for putting this game as number 2 on my list, because you cannot get this expansion, and the company is not remaking the expansion anymore, and I don't know why they're not doing it. Okay, well, I know why. It's because for financial reasons, but I think it's terrible because this is a game that is so fun, so enjoyable, and I know so many people enjoy the game. I think they did so many things right with this game. It gives you the feeling of evolving a civilization. You're going to add extra buildings onto a civilization to evolve these buildings. These buildings will give you culture, give you different things, allow you to spread across the world, continuously building up on your empire and exploring the world, where you will eventually run into other players. You will start building up your sea lanes. You will start exploring things, and you will run into pirates. You're going to run into barbarians. The way your civilization is evolving is going to affect how you're playing. Are you building up a warlike civilization? Are you going to start getting the war technologies? Maybe you're going to start developing your agriculture, so you're not going to be susceptible to things such as plagues or negative things that can affect your civilization. All these decisions go into this game that makes it so brilliant, so enjoyable, and a game that absolutely deserves to be number 2 on my top 51 board games of all time, Clash of Cultures. Number 1 on my list is going to shock a lot of people. Heck, it even shocked me, and I'm not kidding when I said that number 1 and number 2 fluctuated so many times back and forth. Matter of fact, I almost waffled again and made them switch again, but I finally decided, heck, I am putting this game as number 1. I am going to be ready for any kind of backlash I'm going to get, or high kudos. Who knows what people are going to say, but I'm going to be ready for it because I'm ready to stand behind my decision to make Blood Bowl my number 1 board game of all time. Now, Blood Bowl is the game of fantasy football, and this isn't fantasy football that you may have at your office work party, where you're going to spend your points. You know, you're going to put your team together through various different ways of real football players. No, this is real fantasy football where you have fantasy races such as dwarves playing football against fantasy races such as orcs or any one of these numerous different fantasy races, because this is an alternate version of the Warhammer fantasy world where instead of going to war, we decided to settle all of our differences on the gridiron by playing Blood Bowl. This game has taken the spirit and the fun and the enjoyment of American football, emphasize American football, not soccer or football, but has taken the spirit of that game and mixed it with a fantasy game to create a game that is so enjoyable on so many levels. And this is why the game is so enjoyable. Blood Bowl is a good game if you just play the game where I'm going to pick my team, you're going to pick your team, we're going to roll some dice, we're going to spend an afternoon having a lot of fun. It's a good game. The way Blood Bowl is so great is when you play Blood Bowl as a league game. And this is where every single player starts with a team. They start with their funds. They buy their team. They put their team together through all the resources they have. And then they're going to play a full season. And you're going to play this much like you would play real American football, where you can go through all the seasons, go through the playoffs, go through the Super Bowl, and you're going to find out who is the best team because your players are going to gain skills. You're going to have players who are going to suffer injuries, and they're going to die. Because this is fantasy football, and orcs and dwarves and skaven and elves, they're a little bit violent. They like to beat up on each other, and they kind of like to modify the rules of football. And, well, when you start playing with the goblin teams, they like to modify the rules of football a little bit, a lot. You know, when they throw a long bomb, it really is a bomb. But the fun of the game is the stories, the memories, and so much fun you are going to have playing this game. Now, Blood Bowl has been out for 30 years now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not failing my math here. I'm doing this very quickly in my head. But this game has been out for approximately 30 years now. And I have memories of this game playing leagues in the early 90s, late 80s. I still have memories of some of the games I played because I played a Skaven team. And I went through many leagues and played so much. And to have a game where you have memories 30 years later of games you played, that has to cement the game somewhere high up on your top favorite games. Because I have so many games I played. I own hundreds and hundreds of games. And while there's lots of instances, such as Lords of Zidit, I'm never going to forget that game I played in the library. But that's one game of Lords of Zidit I remember playing. I remember dozens of Blood Bowl games. I remember tons of plays when the dice hated me, when the fickle fate of dice were against me, when they were working in my favor. Grand slams, grand plays, grand campaigns where we played all throughout these seasons to finally get and be the winner of the final Blood Bowl championship. This game is so much fun, so much enjoyable, and the stories it manufactures are just stories you will never forget. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this game does rely on dice, and these dice are occasionally, they're going to hate you. But that's part of the fun of the game. It's part of the stories and part of the memories you're going to create every time you play Blood Bowl, my #1 board game of all time. And there you have it, my top 51 board games of all time. Now, this has been a very interesting and very entertaining list to put together. Like I said, there's a lot of times when I've looked at my collection and said, you know, that's a game I really love, and that's a game I really love. But when it came down to making my top 51 board games of all time, there were some extremely challenging decisions. The hardest part was going down from 70 all the way down to 51. And then whittling down the top 10, it became such a brutal challenge. But it was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun. And it was kind of eye-opening for myself because games managed to make it to the top of the list that completely 100% surprised me. It's kind of funny just now, just sitting here thinking about my list, thinking about the top 10 games and thinking heavy strategy, heavy war, heavy strategy, combative, heavy war, strategy, Blood Bowl. I'm still laughing about it. I can't believe it made to be my #1, but I will stand behind that decision because the memories I have of that game are going to stay with me forever as long as I'm going to be a board gamer. Anyways, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'm actually hoping to get a lot of feedback on this series. Leave some comments. Tell me what you think about my list. Tell me I'm off my rocker. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I should be getting off of YouTube because I am absolutely out of my mind. Whatever you like to do, but keep it clean, of course. If you have any comments or questions, throw them down below. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. You can also feel free to support the channel over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/otsbgr. Remember, this channel is all 100% self-funded. It's great because that means I don't have to answer anybody, but it does mean that all the funds that go for the cost come right out of my pocket. Your dollar you toss on a tip jar can help keep the channel going and help cover some of my costs. Hope you enjoy this video. I hope you enjoy this video series. Stay tuned for the wrap-up video. And as always, click that like button, click that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.